What is up guys, welcome back to Above the Middle, the place where we talk about all things personal development, and to part 2 of our procrastination videos. I like to talk too much and I speak too much in my videos and it was too long for one video. So let's get into things that you can be doing to help yourself with procrastination. So tip number 1 is developing your mindfulness. So mindfulness is literally the first step to changing any sort of behaviour. Now what do I mean by mindfulness? It's just becoming more aware of the things that are going on in your head. You need to start identifying those cravings when they come up. Identify that feeling of wanting to avoid something. When you know you need to pay your bills, when you know you need to work on a project and you're like, oh, it feels like I'm just being drawn to do something else, to do something that's going to feel better. Identify that. When you start identifying these patterns in your brain, that's when you can start to change them. You can't change anything if you have no idea what's going on. We need to first identify it, because then that gives you a choice to do what you want to do with it. When you start identifying these urges and these cravings to avoid something, what you are doing is you are taking the focus away from that emotional part of your brain. You're taking the focus away from your limbic system and you're bringing the focus to your prefrontal cortex. Why is this important? Well, your prefrontal cortex is kind of like a security guard that looks over the rest of your brain. When it sees these urges come up from the limbic system, it will look at them and it will think, should I really be avoiding doing this right now? I feel like I should be actually working on this thing because that's going to benefit me in the long run. I need to not give in to this urge and I need to actually do this work. That is what your prefrontal cortex is there for. It's there to apply logic to the rest of the things that are going on in your brain. Because your limbic system, that's an automatic part of your brain. Those reactions are going to come up whether you want them to or not. Your prefrontal cortex gives you the choice. And when you start identifying your thoughts and you identify these cravings when they come up, you're immediately bringing focus to your prefrontal cortex, and that will give you choice and that will give you logic, and you'll be able to apply that to your situation and overcome the urges when they come up. And studies even show that go-getters and hard workers have more activity in their prefrontal cortex. It basically just means that they're able to overcome these urges which are coming up from the rest of their brain. Another thing you need to do is start identifying the real reasons that you're avoiding something, because as I said before, fear and stress are the main things that are going to activate your amygdala. And when that alarm in the amygdala starts going off, that is when the urges and the cravings to avoid something are going to come up. So why is it important to identify why you're avoiding something? Because most likely there's some sort of underlying fear there. If you're avoiding paying your bills, there's probably an underlying fear there of not having enough money. If you're avoiding doing a project, maybe there's a worry there that you won't succeed. Maybe there's a worry there that you won't understand the work and that's going to cause stress, so you want to avoid it. You won't be procrastinating anything unless there is a level of fear or stress associated with it. So we really need to start developing our mindfulness and being inquisitive as to why we are avoiding doing something. Get real with these things. When you start to identify your fears as being there, that immediately decreases the hold that anxiety or fear will have over you. So instead of your amygdala sending out a massive signal, if you identify your fear, it's going to send out a smaller one. So the urge to procrastinate will be much less. And you can start applying logic to your fears. Again, you can start kicking your prefrontal cortex into gear and looking at those fears, and you'll start thinking, well, is that an irrational fear? Do I really need to be avoiding this? Probably not. You know, meditation is a brilliant practice to adopt to start strengthening the areas of your brain which help combat procrastination. So the prefrontal cortex, the thing I spoke about earlier, meditation has been shown to increase grey matter concentration in that part of your brain. Basically, all that means is that part of your brain becomes stronger. And that part of your brain is at a disadvantage compared to your limbic system anyway, because it's a much newer part of your brain. It's at a disadvantage compared to your limbic system because your limbic system showed up so early on in our evolution, which basically just means that it's had so much more time to evolve and be much stronger than our prefrontal cortex. That's why we find it so difficult sometimes to just overpower the urges that come up due to procrastination. But meditation is a really great way you can strengthen your prefrontal cortex. So that is tip number 1, just developing your mindfulness. Tip number 2, it's stress management. So as I said, fear and stress are the two main things that are going to activate your amygdala. And we want to decrease that activation as much as we can, because otherwise these urges are going to come up. There is a correlation between the amount of stress that you are under and your likelihood to give in to procrastination. Because if you are under a lot of stress, then it's just going to activate your amygdala even more. Your limbic system is going to go into overdrive. And studies show the connectivity between your limbic system and your prefrontal cortex is hindered when you are under stress. Which kind of makes sense, because back thousands of years ago, you wanted to make sure that if you were running away from a tiger, that you were just running off that automatic reaction in your brain, that your prefrontal cortex couldn't butt in and start to think of other things you could be doing. You just want to run. And even in this day and age, your brain still works the same. It thinks we're under a lot of emotional stress here. We need to get logic out of the equation. We just need to do something that's going to make you feel better. We need to avoid doing this. We need to procrastinate so that you feel better. So this is what we need to do, and this is tip number 2. You just need to be aware of how much stress you're putting yourself under. So 2 things for stress management. You need to plan in advance. You need to make sure that if you have a busy day the next day, you need to be planning what you're going to do. Because if you're waking up and your immediate thought is, oh, I have no idea what I'm going to do today, I haven't planned anything, I don't know what I'm doing, that is stress. From the get-go, you're putting yourself under stress. So you're so much more likely then to procrastinate. So you need to make a plan in advance so that you can wake up and know what you are doing. It saves yourself stress. So on top of this, you need to develop gateway habits. So what do I mean by gateway habits? So James Clear describes these habits as just little things you do to get yourself into the zone. So when I'm starting to do any work regarding above the middle, I do not sit down and think to myself, right, I need to think of an idea, I need to understand what I need to talk about, I need to make a video, I need to write a blog post. If I go in with that mentality, it's immediate stress and I'm just not going to do anything. I'm going to give in to urges to procrastinate, I'm just going to avoid the work I'm doing. So James Clear describes gateway habits as just little things you do to get yourself into the zone. So how I approach my work with my gateway habits is to literally just tell myself, I'm just going to sit on my laptop and search in Google procrastination. And that's as far as I'm taking my mind. I'm not letting myself think about the big picture, I'm just doing something small, and I'm just going to work from there. Then you just start applying a bit more pressure to yourself. You don't go in with a lot of pressure to begin with. You start small and then you build up the confidence and the capability to then work further. So if you are doing a uni project, for example, just tell yourself, I'm just going to go to the library, I'm going to log onto my computer and see where that takes me. Do not think about the big picture or the deadlines or the stuff you need to do, because you just put yourself under stress from the get-go. You're going to be more likely then to experience urges and cravings to avoid doing what you want to do. We really have to think about the level of stress that we're putting ourselves under. That's why procrastination never works. All you're doing is putting off something that you need to do, which gives you more stress in the long run, which just increases the chances of you procrastinating even further until you're so short on time that you just rush in and you're not putting in your fullest potential, and just the quality of the things that you're doing is not that great, and you find yourself in really uncomfortable positions that you otherwise would not be in if you did not give in to procrastination. So tip number 3, and it's the final one for you guys today, it's reprogramming. So what do I mean by reprogramming? We have to reprogram our brain. We have to create new habits of thinking. We have to tell ourselves that these short-term distractions ultimately are not going to serve you. That ignoring the things that you need to do or that you want to do is not going to get you anywhere. So this limbic system, it only works on short-term reward. It doesn't think far into the future. It's not thinking, oh well, if I avoid doing this, there's a risk there that I'm not going to succeed at the thing I want to do. It's not thinking that far ahead. If it did, then we wouldn't procrastinate in the first place. All it is thinking is, if I do this thing right now, then there's a possibility that I might feel uncomfortable, so I'm just going to avoid doing it so I can feel good right now. It doesn't think into the future. It doesn't care about how you're going to feel about avoiding doing something. It's just going to make you avoid doing it so that you feel better right now. Hopefully you can understand what I mean by that. But essentially what we need to do is just remind ourselves that procrastination doesn't feel good. That actually avoiding doing things that you need to do and that you want to do, working towards goals, doesn't feel good. Like, it doesn't. After you avoid doing the thing that you need to do, and you've binge watched 10 hours of Schitt's Creek on Netflix, you're left with that guilty kind of shame feeling of ignoring things that you need to do or that you want to do. And that sucks. That feels horrible. I feel like that feels worse than just doing a task that might be a bit uncomfortable for you in the moment. It feels so much worse for me, just neglecting the things that you need to do. And Amy Young describes this perfectly, and I'll link below the podcast episode she does on this. But essentially she just says, you know, when we procrastinate, all we're doing is just walking around with these problems and clouds over our head. All day long we're just ignoring the things that we need to be doing, and that starts to weigh you down. That feels so much worse than just the short-term fulfillment of sitting on your phone or watching Netflix or going out or whatever it is that you're doing to avoid the things that you need to be doing. You have to understand that maybe, yes, the thing that you want to do is going to make you feel uncomfortable. Maybe there's a level of fear there, but that shouldn't stop you from doing it. And you know, if you need help or support dealing with fears associated with doing things or anxieties, get support. Speak to a therapist. I did, and it was wonderful for me. It was brilliant. But we really have to just start acknowledging that Ignoring the things that we need to do doesn't feel good in the long run. All you are doing is shooting yourself in the foot. It is self-sabotage at the highest extent. And procrastination has the ability to really fuck up the things that we want to do. You know, you won't put your fullest potential into things. You'll rush to do things. The quality of the things that you create or make will not be that great. So that is what we need to get clear on. It's just that reprogramming of our brain. So that's all we're going to talk about today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you've been able to take something from this. If we go over those 3 tips again, it's mindfulness, stress management, and reprogramming. You can do it. I believe in you. So I'll see you next Wednesday for another video. Check out my blog where I talk about this stuff in a little bit more detail. Might give you a bit of a different perspective or explain it a bit better in the way I could. Check out the description where I'll post links to podcasts or other sort of things that I find quite useful regarding this subject. Press that subscribe button and I will see you next week. Thank you so much, guys. See you later.